What you're about to watch is an excerpt from the larger all-achievement guide for CK3 that I made just a little while ago. If you're watching this right when the video comes out, then the CK3 all-achievement guide is releasing in just under a week. But if you're watching this in the future, then you can look in the description to find a link to the video. I'm not going to pad out this intro very much longer, I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows this is an excerpt from a larger video. If you want to see the whole video, look in the description. Enjoy. This next run covers 6 of the 10 Northern Lords achievements all in one go, which is, pretty cool on its own, but it basically involves us just conquering a huge amount of land pretty quickly. The main 2 achievements we're getting are Blood Eagle, which requires us to start as any child of Ragnarr Lodbrok and conquer all the British Isles, and the second one is Canute the Greater as an unreformed tribal. Take this to secure the High Kingdom of North Sea Decision. Alongside that, we're also going to be getting Faster Than the Fox, which requires us to, as a Norse tribal, control the entire of Sicily, but note, when it says Norse tribal, you don't actually have to be tribal. Feudal is completely fine, although we are going to be tribal anyway, but for your own sake, you don't have to be tribal. It's just a lie. Alongside that, we're getting King of all the Isles, which requires us to start and stay as North Germanic Asatruan of any kind, and completely control everything in the islands in the Atlantic and Mediterranean region without ever having over 80 realm size. After that, we're also going to be getting Frankokratia, which requires us to, as a French Catholic, hold and completely control the Kingdom of Thessalonica without holding or being vassals to the Byzantine Empire. Alongside that, we get Miklagardariki, which is quite fitting, as it requires us to start and stay as a North Germanic Asatruan of any kind, and completely control the Kingdom of Thessalonica, and hold any empire without holding the Byzantine Empire. Say they both require Thessalonica. You'd think it doesn't work because one requires French Catholic, one requires North Germanic Asatruan, but luckily we can change cultures. After that, we're also going to be getting a True and Perfect Knight, which requires us to have a max rank acclaimed knight with that Warrior of the Faith trait, which means things like Crusader or Valhalla Bound or Mujahideen, things like that. Alongside, first, the Crusader Kings, which requires us to start as North Germanic of any kind, and participate immediately as attacker in the First Catholic Crusade. You can probably see how those two are connected. We're going to wrap it up after that with a nice Saga and Stone, which requires us to have our dynasty erect 100 Runestones. It's a lot, it's a long run, but it's a fun one. The estimate is about 3 hours to 4 hours, and the RNG presence is medium to high. Let's get into it. We're going to drop in as Ivar and immediately go to university, and that's because we need to get a better education trait, simply due to the fact that that trait gives you extra siege progress. That's hugely important. Alongside that, the extra perks are super good, and if we get lucky, we can get a book, and the book might either give us more martial experience, or if we're extremely lucky, we get a health book. But I'll get into the tactics later on having to do with health a little bit further into the run when we're more relevantly looking at that. Instead, we're going to focus in on the war against Northumbria and against East Anglia. East Anglia can be a bit tough, so we focus on Northumbria first. You're going to hire some reigning veterans who are going to basically be the only units that we use for the whole game, and we're going to just try to occupy everything that we can by splitting the army. We want to get all the occupations before Jorvik can, even though he's kind of our friend, he's kind of also not, because he will happily destroy our units if he chooses to. And if that happens, you probably should just reset. Anyway, once you beat Northumbria, wait until Jorvik's done their war, if they're not already, and then ally with them, then call them in against East Anglia. One thing that's important for this run is not letting too many of your troops die in the beginning section, because the special units that Ivar has don't come back once they die. So we're going to use Jorvik to help us fight against the West 6 Mercia East Anglia coalition down in the south. Once they're called into the war, go ahead and meet up with them and then head into East Anglia. Hopefully, if you're lucky, sometimes the West 6 army just won't be there, and it's pretty easy to win. Other times you're unlucky and you got to fight a pretty big army. When you conquer Northumbria and East Anglia, give all the land to Anglo-Saxon locals because we need acceptance. The only reason we're going to make the Anglo-Nordic culture is purely because we want to get the onagers from the culture. Anglo-Saxons have siege equipment, and the biggest slowdown in this run is sieging, because we have to go super fast. We're going to be at war the entire run, basically. So yeah, get those local nobles, get the acceptance up, and while we're waiting for the acceptance, we're going to head off into Scandinavia. You're going to want to attack Upland right away because they can get some strong allies later, such as the Rurikids, and we definitely don't want that. And we're going to go for their islands. Upland specifically has 2 islands. One is Oland and one is Åland, or for some reason, Evanima as they call it, even though it's ruled by a Norse character, which is hilarious because when the Finns rule Evanima, it gets called Åland, as if it were ruled by a Norse person. Kind of a mix-up there, Paradox, and considering you're a Swedish company, kind of cringe. Either way, go get Åland, and also declare one Gotland at the same time, because that's also an island that we're going to need. Assuming Upland has no alliances, you should be good, but if they do get any alliances, call in Jorvik, and you and Jorvik together can almost certainly eviscerate Upland and whatever allies they have. And remember, it isn't worth calling in allies if you don't have to, because we're a tribe. So if you think you can get away with not calling in allies, don't call them in. The reason we want to save our prestige is because we need it, first of all, to declare wars, and second of all, in order to get more units. We're going to need a lot of siege equipment, we're going to need a lot of Varangian veterans, so save the prestige whenever you can. You should be feasting as much as possible, you should be hunting when you can, but feasts are better, hunts don't give as much prestige. I've got another note about prestige generation here, and that's a little bit of a hidden game mechanic that some people aren't really aware of, and that's how to generate prestige from battles. You may have noticed that sometimes you fight a battle and then you get prestige, and other times you don't, but you always get fame. Here's the thing, to get prestige from battles, there are two ways. First of all, if the army is hostile to you, so for example, if they're a vassal of someone you're at war with, or if they're a raider, you get prestige from the battle if you win it, or if you're an ally in a war, then you get prestige from the win. So you'll notice I did a thing here when I was fighting Upland. I chose not to end the war when I could have. I instead sailed down back to Oland to fight the little army of Småland because they were hostile to me due to being at war with a person I was at war with. It is completely worth it, always, to go and fight battles for prestige because we have the Dynasty Legacy that gives extra prestige from battles, and that prestige can be translated directly into more units and more siege equipment. So definitely take all the battles with orange troops. That's the color they're going to be. Rather than red, they'll be orange. That's how you know you get prestige from them. Anyway, once you've got Gotland down, go ahead and head into Ossel, because that's another island that we're going to need, and the reason why we're going for the Baltics first is purely because they're just relatively close by, and it's a good opportunity to make some prestige. We could work towards Mediterranean right away, or we could do the Atlantic Islands. There's all kinds of directions you can go. It doesn't matter that much. I just like to get the Baltics out of the way first, because some of the people in the Baltics can get really strong if you give them the time to do so. For example, Upland. If Upland forms Sweden, they get much more powerful than they would be if you attack them now. The reason why I focus on the islands first is because we're not going to be able to go above 80 realm size, and if we focus on doing, say, Canute the Greater, which would require us to hold England, Denmark, and Norway, our realm size will almost certainly go above 80. If we try to get Blood Eagle first, again, our realm size will almost certainly go above 80, so we do the islands first. This can be kind of bad because getting Ivar to live long enough for Canute the Greater is a huge pain. It only happens if you are extremely fast and extremely lucky. That being said, I have alternative strategies for playing as an heir, which we're going to talk about because in my run I ended up having to do that. We'll talk about that later though. For now, let's focus in on getting more islands. For my next target, I went after Sealand, and that's only because they are particularly weak. So we can see here that Denmark formed on the other side. They formed in Jylland. So for that reason, the Jarl in Sealand was quite weak. I went after him. It's always good to pounce on small people rather than try to fight the big boys right now, because it's a waste of our time to engage in large pitched battles. We want to just go through, siege the capital, win the war immediately, win like one battle, win one siege, whatever little wars we can knock off, those are amazing. By this point in the run, I got enough acceptance to make the Anglo-Nordic culture, and what I recommend going with is malleable invaders, coastal warriors, northern stories, and performative honor. That's because malleable invaders gives us a bonus to our opinion with wrong religion people, so that way we don't get as many problems with our counties being all the wrong religion. Coastal warriors, obviously, for the Varangian veterans. Northern stories for the Runestones for Saga and Stone later. And performative honor is important because it gives us accolade glory gain. We're going to talk about accolades in just a second. During moments of downtime, it's important to be doing stuff like feasts and hunts because we can't really be sitting around doing nothing. All the prestige that we generate is going to get used. So make all the Varangians you need, make all the siege weapons that you need. I recommend going with 3 sets of Varangians, maxed out of course, and 2 siege weapon stacks. It's pretty common that we split our army in half, so having a siege weapon stack on each army is very useful. If you want to build buildings in your holdings, you can. It's not that important, but you certainly can do it, and the only ones that are worth building in this particular run are war camps and the actual upgrade to the tribal holding to level 2. Everything else is kind of pointless. You could do gathering halls for the passive prestige, but it'll cost you more prestige than what it'll generate by the time this run is done, so I just wouldn't recommend it. Let's talk a little bit about accolades now. So one of the achievements you're supposed to be getting is True and Perfect Knight, and getting a max level accolade is actually quite a lot of work. Luckily, as a Norse person, we're going to be fighting a lot of battles. You gain accolade glory by doing things like tournaments, feasts, hunts, and all that jazz, that's at least what the game tells you, but the actual way to get accolade glory is by fighting. That's the most efficient way to get it. Don't waste your time trying to get 25 glory per feast. Remember, level 6 requires 2,100, and every time your acclaimed knight dies or otherwise loses their post, you're going to lose a couple hundred glory. So don't worry about feasts and hunts. People in my chat are always telling me that stuff. Just get into fights, go raiding, go win wars. Make sure the accolade knight is always fighting. Now when it comes to picking an accolade, quite frankly, it's completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter at all, only because we're going to be winning all our battles anyway. But if you care about the quality of your accolade, getting the Vanguard accolade is the only one that really matters for this run. That's because it gives you extra size for your heavy infantry, which is basically all that we're using, and it also gives you a lot of bonuses to those infantry. Other than that, just make an accolade, doesn't matter what it is, and make sure it's someone young. So I tend to pick someone who's like 18 or 16 or whatever, and have a core physician around who can help them if they get injured in battle. If you do that, you should, by the end of this run, have a level 6 accolade. And we're of course going to be tying that into getting the first Crusade. You'll see, it's all quite slick actually. Anyway, let's get back to conquering islands. We're going to be attacking Wessex to get the Isle of Wight. And again, the reason why we're kind of leaving most of the land to the other people is because we got to keep our realm size low. So taking Wight is one of the last sort of hidden islands to get. One thing that can be confusing about King of all the Isles is what things are considered islands and what aren't. So, for example, Venice is an island, but you know what else is also an island? Is the piece of the Duchy of Venice that's clearly on the mainland. I don't know why, but it just is. Another weird one can be the island of Anglesey, which you might have seen me conquer just in the clip earlier as a part of Wales. That is also an island, even though it looks like it's not quite an island, it is. That being said, Ireland is not an island, so, you know, kind of weird, but it just works. On the CK3 wiki, in the achievements section, you can go to King of all the Isles, and there's a very convenient map there that marks all of the islands for you. I'm not going to go through all of them, because that would kind of be a waste, because go on the wiki, but if that's assured, I will be showing you how to conquer all the islands for sure. Getting diplomatic range to the Mediterranean is kind of our next goal to get more islands, so attack Asturias or any of the Andalusian lords, whoever is weakest, and just get a piece of land that's close to the Mediterranean so we can get access. In my case, I attacked Asturias for a little piece of Galicia. I'm going to try to blitz through some of the islands now because I want to waste too much of your time. Conquer the Canaries, conquer Majorca, conquer Sardinia, conquer Sicily, conquer Crete. From here, if you're confident, go for the northern part of Cyprus that the Arabian Empire has. In my case, I completely could dominate them, but if you have a very strong Arabian Empire in your game, you might not be able to do it. You're going to have to judge yourself in your game based on if you can do it or not. At this point, you might be considering the option of making a kingdom, and that is wise to do because you're probably getting an overextension penalty at this point. But a true speedrunner knows that speed is more important than money or levies. If you stay as a duke, then we can fabricate claims on the kingdoms of Denmark, Norway, and England using the scholar perk tree and the sanction loopholes. That makes conquering England way faster. Now when it comes to Denmark, it's not that many duchies to conquer anyway, but Norway and England, that's a lot of duchies. So I highly recommend not becoming a king if you think you can handle the negative income. That being said, learn to evaluate your own situation. If you're looking at England and you see that Alfred died or something, and there's just no way England's going to form, it's probably not worth gambling the difficulty of the run on a thing that won't pay out. So look around. Is there a Kingdom of England forming? Is there a Kingdom of Norway? Is there a Kingdom of Denmark? In my game, there was a Denmark and an England, but no Norway. Norway is very rare, to be fair, so that's uncommon that'll happen. If you see a Denmark and an England, it's pretty good to take advantage of sanction loopholes and get some claims on them. If Sigurd forms Denmark, you can always claim it using Renown as well, so you don't necessarily need it, but England's the big catch here. That one's really hard to form if you don't claim the kingdom in like one go. The next major war of this run is against Byzantine Empire. We've been saving our Invade Kingdom casus belli this entire time for the particular reason that Invade Kingdom lets you take all land that you occupy. Now, Byzantine Empire is unfortunate because they have a lot of land in many islands and they're all across different kingdoms and different duchies, which is painful. For that reason, invading kingdom on them for Thessalonica is perfect. We need Thessalonica because it has several duchies that have islands in them. We need it because we need to get Frankokratia and Miklagardariki, and also to give us access to some pretty nice land in general. That being said, we need more than just Thessalonica, so we're gonna have to go and occupy a bunch of stuff. The AI is a little bit challenged, we could say, and will tend to just send their army down to Crete to siege those holdings, while you send your armies in fleets to go and siege all of their islands. There are particular islands we have to focus on. So first of all, the Byzantines tend to hold land in Sicily, including Malta, so you have to get those. Second of all, the island in Cyprus, you need that. And third of all, the most sneaky, is Cephalonia. This duchy is an island, despite it not really looking like it. The one where Corfu is kind of looks like an island, but then the other piece of it just doesn't even look like it, but you need the whole Duchy of Cephalonia. It's only 2 counties, but it's fine. Send your armies in boats to go around and siege things. You'll be way faster than the Byzantines because you have sappers and because you have the siege equipment, and you should be able to get everything. You're also going to want to grab Lecce, which is in the heel of the boot of Italy there, because that's part of Sicily. We need that too in order to get faster than the Fox. Once you have everything occupied that you need, go and fight the Byzantine armies for real, and hope that you can capture the Emperor or something and just win the war like that. If you can pull that off, then you got everything that you need from the Byzantine Empire and you have to fight them ever again. If you fail to capture the Byzantine Emperor, then head on over to the Kingdom of Thessalonica and occupy some pieces of it to stop the ticking war score from going in the enemy's favor for too much longer. It's pretty simple to do, and the war is pretty easy, mostly because the only good units the Greeks have are cataphracts, but Varangian veterans counter those and are also kind of just better. Varangian veterans are so good, they'll carry you the whole game. It's kind of crazy, so don't worry about fighting battles. Just make sure your acclaimed knight is always fighting. The acclaimed knight needs the glory from these battles. This is also an extra little bonus benefit of staying as a duchy, in that every time you win a war against a higher rank realm, you will gain glory for your accolades as well. So this is another reason to not make a kingdom. Although I guess against Byzantines we'd have gotten as a kingdom anyway, but you take my point. From here, King of all the Isles should be well within your grasp. I only had one set of islands left to get, and that was just the last little piece of Denmark I forgot about, and Iceland. Once I conquered Iceland, I got King of all the Isles, and that was the end of that little part of the run. We no longer have an 80 realm size limit, so we can start expanding real fast and work on Canute the Greater and Blood Eagle. Your main goal is going to be making the kingdoms of Norway, England, and Denmark as fast as possible, and that's because Canute the Greater requires us to become the High King of the North Sea Empire. And that requires you to hold those 3 aforementioned kingdoms for 30 years, uninterrupted, on one character. That's tough. That's very tough for an Ivar who should be, if you've been playing relatively fast, in his mid-40s to early 50s. Yeah, it's pretty unlikely that Ivar's going to make it to his 80s. It can happen, it has happened, but in a lot of games, it's unlikely. So for that reason, we're going to start working on an heir while we finish conquering up these kingdoms. Get a young concubine, who is, let's say, 16 or something, maybe with a good trade if you can find it, and try to have a kid. Hopefully it's a son. If you can have a son, then get rid of all your other sons. Hopefully they'll mostly have died of old age because, they're quite old as well as you are. And you can disinherit whoever you can't get rid of, or you can make them into knights, send them off to their death, whatever you want to do. Disinheriting is usually the easiest way to do it. Once you have the kind of wunderkind son that you want to use to become the heir, educate them to be the best character they can be with diplomacy. We want to live 30 years without any problems, and diplomacy is great for that. So raise the kid, and once you're ready, once the kid's 16, just depose yourself. Now, I don't always depose myself, because keeping Ivar a bit longer can be good. For Blood Eagle, conquering all of Britain can take a long time, but Ivar will do it very fast. So again, this will be based on your judgment. When you think you no longer need Ivar, that's the time to get rid of him, unless you think he can last the 30 years. Now the chance of that is pretty low. If you get Whole of Body, maybe you can make it, but even then, Whole of Body might last you to like 75, might last you to like 78, it might get you real close, but it means nothing if it doesn't get you all the way to the 30 years that you need. So do a judgment call, figure it out. Anyway, this is where my advice will start to sort of shrivel up a little bit, simply because conquering all the land you need for Blood Eagle is really simple. There's just not a lot of strong powers in the area to deal with. If you did what I did with the sanction loopholes and got a claim to England, it's pretty easy to conquer England. Only problem is all those Christian vassals, but once they rise up, you can just revoke all their titles, or you can ransom them back, whatever you want to do with them. Once they rise up, you can just keep them in prison. Do whatever you want. You should be okay, because you can defeat any rebellion that comes up. You're pretty much untouchable with your immensely powerful army. Keep an eye on your accolade and see what his level is. If he's getting to level 6, that'd be great. The Crusades haven't triggered yet until we actually take a holy site. So Crusades trigger after some time passes, or after a holy site's under threat. So when you take England, you'll take Kent, and Canterbury is a holy site. So it's possible you'll trigger the Crusades doing that. If the Crusades get triggered, keep an eye out and see if you can find out when one gets declared. If it gets declared on you, you get a pop-up and it's very obvious. If it's not declared on you though, it can be hard to notice when one's coming. Sometimes, in my runs, I miss the Crusade, and then I actually can't get First the Crusader Kings. And that's what happened in this run. But that's completely okay, because we can just do First the Crusader Kings later in a different run. It's completely fine. But if you're able to do it, it's pretty fun to get it all at once. In my particular run, I still got the True and Perfect Knight towards the end of the run by joining the second Crusade, but obviously that doesn't give me First the Crusader Kings. I've skipped ahead to where we have Blood Eagle now, and I want to talk a little bit about keeping a realm together. So one thing I've been doing in this run that I haven't yet talked about because I wanted to keep the advice relatively focused is avoiding getting assassinated. Militarily, we're far too strong for any vassal faction to ever cause any problems for us. We can put down any vassal very easily. Let's talk about how to stop assassinations. There are two situations where assassinations may happen to you. One is if you have a rival, because your rivals always try to kill you. And the other one is if you have someone who will inherit land from you. People who are your heirs will try to kill you unless they like you. The rival thing is the more important note here. Rivals are how you die in this game. They are horrible. You don't want to have rivals whenever you can possibly avoid it. People often think that the opinion of people matters. Now, opinion does matter for agents who are joining murders, but opinion does not cause people to start murder plots. I know, it sounds counterintuitive, but basically if someone has negative 100 opinion of you, they'll only do something against you if you're rivals. So with that in mind, your focus should be throughout the entire run, but especially once you're trying to get Canute the Greater, it should be on trying to not have any rivals. Get rid of them however you can, whether that's imprisoning and executing, assassinating, making them have no land, and then just hoping that they, wander off somewhere that's too far away. Whatever you can do to get rid of them, you gotta get rid of them. House feuds are the ultimate murderer in this game. House feuds are a very difficult to understand and very nonsensical mechanic, but they will get you killed, so you gotta stop those as soon as possible. Beyond that, the classic advice of having a cupbearer, having bodyguards, get your minor positions filled out, people that you trust, etc. That kind of stuff is also important. The other part of keeping them together is, of course, being the correct culture and religion and stuff. We're not going to be changing off of Norse, because Norse is too good, but we're going to be becoming Catholic, and that's because you gotta join a crusade anyway, so might as well become Catholic, and because a lot of our vassals in England are Catholic. Because we went down the learning tree as Ivar, we actually have decent enough learning that we can convince most of the realm to become Catholic with us. As well, people just like us because we have a very high level of fame. Being Catholic is also nice because now that we've conquered all of Britannia, we don't really have to go to war anymore. So getting the at peace penalty to go away is kind of nice. That being said, we didn't have a problem with an at peace penalty, of course. We more had a problem with an offensive war penalty, but it's nice to be able to sit on your laurels and not have to worry about things. Despite being Catholic, because we're still tribal, we can raid. So in order to get our accolades to level up while we're waiting for another crusade to be declared, we're just going to go raiding. In this run, I had quite a bit of hubris behind me, so I was still playing as Ivar, thinking maybe I could make it those 30 years. I got really close, but ultimately, I'll spoil it for you, I didn't make it. So that cost me a lot of time on this run. This run can actually be quite fast if you depose right away, but of course, it can be tough to make that judgment call. I'm not going to act like I'm perfect at it, okay? I thought I'd make it. I didn't make it. It's fine. Focus on raiding so you can get your accolade up, and then when you get level 6, just try not to let the guy die, I guess. Accolades are very annoying. It's difficult to make them work, and I know it's frustrating, but luckily, being tribal, raiding is a very good way to get a lot of accolade glory. You just gotta be having battles. The raids themselves don't give you anything, but the battles do. So try to find targets who are of similar strength to you, and the best way to do that is only raise your men-at-arms. The AI only considers the quantity of troops when deciding if it wants to raise its army to fight you, not the quality. So if you raise only your men-at-arms, you've got like thousands of Varangian veterans who are just going to rip through tens of thousands of levies from your enemies. So when the enemy sends 10,000 units at you, just stand your ground and your Varangians rip them apart, and you'll get a ton of glory. Because glory, just like prestige and piety, is based on the number of kills in the battle. Okay, now that guy's done talking about accolades, we need to actually rewind a little bit and go look at what just happened here, because that was really important. So I deposed myself and started playing as my heir. And in this run, I made the critical error that I literally told you about previously in this guide, and that's not to mass ransom a bunch of prisoners and generate a shit ton of rivals that you cannot deal with, especially as a new ruler who is relatively disliked. This guy is a good character. He's quite good, actually. Those stats are all really, really good. But when you have that many rivals, you're going to have like 10 murder plots on you, and one of them is going to work. Statistically speaking, if they're all 5%, only takes 20 murder plots for one of them to work out, but they're not all 5%. Some of them are going to be a lot higher than that. So for that reason, this guy actually got killed and ended up making my run almost look like it was going to be a failure. But of course, I don't give in, okay? I chose to just depose myself again and end up reuniting my realms, and I ended up playing as a little girl who would go on to become the High Queen of North Sea Empire. Of course, this is all stuff that, hopefully doesn't happen to you, but just to be clear, CK3 is a game which you can improvise through, which you can figure out, and you will, hopefully, if you're skilled, make your way through it, like I have here. But that doesn't mean it was easy to do. Doesn't mean I recommend you doing it this way. I highly recommend that once you are playing as your king that wants to rule for 30 years, don't do these mass ransoms. Don't risk generating rivals. Don't do anything scary. Just sit there on your laurels and wait. Oh, and quick note here. In the character I was playing before this, the son of Ivar, I became French by moving my capital to a county I conquered from France and then just clicking the correct local culture button. By becoming French, and because I was already Catholic, I immediately got the Frankokratia achievement. One thing to keep in mind is you can't raise Runestones as French, obviously, so you're going to want to get back to being not French. And the best way to do that is just to raise acceptance with your old Anglo-Nordic culture and then make a hybrid out of it. You can make a French Anglo-Nordic hybrid, I guess it'll be called Angevin most likely, whatever you want to call it. Just get Runestone raisers back and make sure you have North Germanic heritage. That's the most important part. Anyway, for me, this is where the run diverges very heavily from what would optimally be your run. I ended up having to play as this little girl, put down a bunch of rebellions. What would have normally been a very chill 30-year waiting period became constant rebellions. But thankfully, Rangian veterans are super overpowered, so we won everything, and everything was chill and fine, and she grew up, and everything ended up being okay. But it was very scary during the run. I was like, damn, this is probably not going to go well. But it ended up being okay. Finally, a crusade came to be, and unfortunately, it's not the first crusade of the game, so again, losing that other achievement. But we can get True and Perfect Knight here. My accolades have been all over the place, because of course I've been swapping characters, stuff like that, but it's okay if you don't have the level 6 accolade right now, because we have to get a Crusader. Then we can just make them into an accolade, and then get them to level 6 by rating. It doesn't take that long to get it by rating, especially if you've been stacking stuff that gives you more accolade glory gain, like Chivalry, which the French have, or Performative Honor, or Only the Strong, etc. These all give extra stuff. So yeah, when the Crusade comes, get any Crusader, and then make them an accolade, and then you should be good to go. Just make sure they're Catholic. If you change off of being Catholic while you have a Crusader trait, you just lose the Crusader trait. So don't change religions a bunch until you actually have True and Perfect Knight. Alright, so I'm skipping way far ahead here. Basically just to me getting True and Perfect Knight, all I've been doing, literally all, is just raiding everywhere. Because the AI doesn't consider the quality of the troops when choosing to attack, I send in what appears to be a very weak army of just like 2,000 to 3,000 men, and then they slaughter tens of thousands of men, and the accolade gains glory. I've been doing that over and over again. I made a hybrid with my old Anglo-Nordic culture in order to create, you know, something that gives even more accolade glory gain, and eventually I got it just before I was able to make the North Sea Empire. Right before creating the North Sea Empire, I converted back to Asatru paganism, because of course you have to be an unreformed pagan, and we also get Miklagardariki alongside Canute the Greater at this point, simply because we already conquered Thessalonica a long time ago. We're nearing the end of this run now, but we're not quite done yet. Let's look at a few more things. The last thing we have to get in this run is Saga and Stone, which is a bit of a process to get, so I'm going to explain it step by step as we go. First, we have to stop being an emperor or a king. We have to become just a duke. So I'm going to do that by making my primary title elective and then electing someone that isn't myself, while simultaneously granting away every kingdom I have that isn't the particular duchy I want to live in, which in this case I've chosen to be Latium. You can pick anywhere you want. I just picked Latium because I don't know, Rome is nice, I guess. Next, go to your succession and make sure that you have just one heir. We don't want any splits in the realm, we just want the one heir. Next, make sure that your only heir has a culture that can raise runestones. I've been screwed in the past by accidentally not having the correct culture, so make sure that's the case. And then once you're ready, go for an imprisonment war against any vassal that will refuse, and we're going to intentionally surrender it and watch as we lose our empire, but keep our duchy, which is exactly what we need. The reason we do it this way is that the cost of a runestone is based on your monthly income, so by choosing to have a lower income like this, our runestones are cheaper. That being said, I have so much money that I probably didn't even need to do this, but nonetheless, you know, it's just for your run's sake. You might not have 20,000 gold banked up. Basically, every runestone will cost 50 gold when we're this low income, and that means we're going to have to spend 5,000 gold. It was at this point in my run that I actually made a pretty funny mistake, and that is that I was playing as a woman. This is not a completely unforgivable mistake, as it can be amended by changing religions, but you see, you can't grant land to a woman in a male-dominated faith, which is what Asatru is. So that was unfortunate, and in fact, I ended up still doing the tactic anyway, not realizing that my heir was my different dynasty father, and in so doing gave myself a game over, which is really funny. I found that to be absolutely hilarious, as did my chat, as you can probably see on screen there. But I'd like that to not happen to you, so basically a little bit of advice here, well, advice more like necessity. If your character is female, then change to a religion like Cathar, for example, so that you can have equal granting of titles and therefore won't get game overed by having a mom instead of having a dad. If you have this problem where you were playing as a queen, you'll also most likely have the problem of the father still being alive and having the succession be in the father's favor. So for that reason, I recommend getting that father out of the picture before you do the Tyranny War. But if it doesn't work out that way, do a murder plot as I'm doing here and just wait it out. You'll get it eventually. Once your father's out of the picture, and once all of your siblings have been disinherited or otherwise removed from succession in some other way, you're ready to begin the Runestone Loop, as I call it. It's a very simple name, of course. This is the exact same process by which we got the achievement in the previous all achievement guide video, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time going over it again. But basically, you're allowed to create a runestone for one of three things happening. Either one of your parents dies, you win a war against someone else, or you gain a rank in your title. So let's say you go from Duke to King, you can raise a runestone. Let's say your father or mother dies, you can raise a runestone. And let's say you won any war, you can raise a runestone. They give different modifiers, but those don't matter for this particular achievement. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a runestone by increasing our rank, but you might be wondering, well, how are we going to increase rank over and over again? It's quite simple. You're going to grant a county to your mother. She's a count now, a countess rather. Then you're going to depose yourself by losing a tyranny war, which will take your mother from being a countess to a duchess because she inherited your duchy from you. That means she gained a rank, she can raise a runestone. Now here's the problem, there's a 5-year cooldown on runestone, so you're thinking, well, I can't raise another runestone, can I? That's correct, but that cooldown goes away if you lose all of your land. So now we're going to give a county to our son, and he's going to be a count. Then we're going to depose again, making the mom landless. She no longer has a cooldown on the runestone, and the son has also gained a rank, so he can raise a runestone. You keep doing this over and over again, and you'll find that you have raised 100 runestones in no time. Well, I say no time, but it does take quite a while. It's very mind-numbing. I recommend having some good music to listen to while you do it. Okay. Alright, a little bit slow, but not bad at all. Not bad at all, chat. Next. That was the Great Viking Conquest, as I've named it, and it encompassed a great many achievements, but we got it done. It's one of the longer runs in the whole collection here, and if you want to, you can always do most of this stuff separately. In my previous achievement guides, I did most of the achievements separately, although some of them together, and if you want a more particularly focused guide, you can always check that out. But I like to do this stuff the way that I do it, which is in one big run. It's a lot more fun that way, if you ask me. The next run is sort of the opposite of that. The next run we've got on the list is much simpler, although still a bit RNG, and we'll take a look at that now. So that was the legendary Great Viking Conquest run, as I've named it in my speedruns. If you enjoyed that sort of content, be sure to subscribe and like, and also check out my Twitch channel to watch video runs like this live. Most importantly, look in the description for the CK3 All Achievement Guide updated to Legacy of Persia. It's my magnum opus, and I really appreciate if you checked it out. Thank you for your time.